Let's talk about travel. A few moments ago, that's the legal kind of travel as opposed to the illegal kind of travel. People are getting on small dinghies and travelling across the English Channel. The Border Force has been using jet skis and night vision cameras in a bid to see off small boats that are, massing extraordinary numbers in travelling over from France. The bank holiday weekend last weekend saw more than 1,000 people make the crossing because of the calmed weather. Last Friday, being the busiest day of the year so far, included 50 lone children. And last night, the Home Office confirmed that 201 migrants crossed the Channel yesterday alone, taking the total number of people to have made the journey this year to 4,349. And those are just the ones we know about. So what needs to be done to tackle this issue? It's been promised again and again by various Home Secretaries, including the current one, Priti Patel, but nothing seems to happen. Let's talk to former Brexit Party and former Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, who joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Of course, it was you that really first publicised for a lot of us, what was actually happening. It was being ignored by a lot of the mainstream media. People completely unaware of the just sheer scale of this problem. So far, what has been done to tackle it, and what do you think does need to be done?
You're quite right, Jude. I mean, this time last year, I was going out in the Channel trying to bring some publicity to this issue, and I predicted 5,000 would cross last year, and that was laughed at, obviously. It turned out to be 8,500. Just to get a sense of perspective, we're headed for over 20,000 this year. That's 20,000 people coming into the country. And yes, you can talk about young children and women, but just get a handle on this. 85% of those that come are young men between the ages of 18 and 30. We've no idea where most of them come from because they destroy their ID documents. We then have to provide accommodation. There are hotels being filled up all over the country. And this is not just expensive. It isn't just wrong in the sense that, ever since 1951, it's been very clear that if you want to claim refugee status, you do it in the first safe country that you come to. It also poses quite a significant national security risk, especially those coming from countries like Syria, many of whom have been involved in quite savage, vicious wars over the course of the last few years. And there is only one way to deal with it. I mean, literally only one way to deal with it. I've seen this problem myself at first hand in America just 10 days ago. Back in 2012, Australia had a prime minister called Tony Abbott. And Abbott said, anyone that comes to Australia via this route will not qualify for refugee status and will be removed. And indeed, that is what he did. And in the end, the boats coming from Indonesia were taken under tow and sent back to Indonesia. And you know what happened? The boats stopped coming. Now, we as a country have always, for centuries, been quite open to genuine refugees. People really in fear of their life because of their religion, their race, or whatever else it may be. And if we're going to take a share of genuine refugees, that's fine, but that must be processed offshore. We cannot allow this illegal trade to continue on this scale.
And there's no doubt at all the Australian system did work, and it also saved a lot of life because people were not dying in those boats on which we had seen previously. We're constantly told there is a political will to deal with this, and that Home Secretary Priti Patel is fully on board with this, but we never seem to see any action. Obviously, we're not seeing so many attempts by the French to stop what's happening. We've also got legal action against the government for how they do actually deal with asylum seekers, these illegal migrants, as when they arrive. The Napier barracks has been a question mark about that. It's a temporary accommodation. It's outside Folkestone. Previously, obviously, perfectly acceptable for our military to be housed there, but it has fallen into a rather decrepit state. And the High Court ruled yesterday that those border facilities simply are not acceptable. It has serious concerns. Look, there is somewhere between housing people in the Ritz and housing people in substandard accommodation, where people are housed in a dormitory with people who've got COVID, no privacy, no electrics working, no warm water. We are a civilized country. We should treat people in a civilized way. These people shouldn't be in prison camps. But I suppose most people are looking for some sort of medium way there.
Napier Barracks was good enough for tens of thousands of national servicemen and for the regular army afterwards, but clearly not good enough for those that are illegally trafficked into the United Kingdom. And you're right, it may not be a 4-star hotel, but far from being a prison, those that were in there were allowed to walk down into Folkestone, Sandgate, Hythe, the local town. So, this was not a prison camp. That is a misinterpretation. But here's the real problem. One of the things that did not happen with Brexit is we did not leave the Convention on European Rights. We have not left the European Court of Human Rights. And of course, because of that, Tony Blair incorporated the Human Rights Act into UK law, bringing European law into British law. And that court case yesterday was taken by 6 people who have illegally entered the country, who we may now have to pay compensation. And I think one of the truths here that Priti Patel will not confront is that unless we deal with the European Human Rights Act, we have got a very, very big problem in returning anybody to France. And yet she never comes clean about it, makes an endless series of statements, gets up at the Tory party conference and talks tough. Everybody claps and says, isn't she marvellous? At the moment, she's proving to be one of the worst Home Secretaries ever.
Can I also ask you about the latest chaos over travel for those of us trying to do it legally in and out of the country, and our bids to get to the 21st of June and get our freedoms back, the fundamental freedoms that we, until the 23rd of March last year, we just considered were just normal parts of life, seeing who we wanted, going where we wanted, travelling when we wanted and the like. It's all still very much up in the air. What do you make of how the government's handling this?
Well, I'm in quarantine right now, Julia, because I got back from America 6 days ago, although with the weather, it's not been too awful, I have to say. Look, 26 million people have now been double vaccinated, virtually everybody over the age of 50, all of the vulnerable, and we were promised that once this happened, a degree of normality could return. And yet, it seems the new form of government is Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock in a room full of experts. Now, we've learned from Brexit that experts are very often wrong. There is no proper due parliamentary process. There is no public debate. There is an excess of caution. And frankly, I've just had enough of it. There's one upside, though, one big, big upside. I don't think anybody in their right minds this morning goes online and books a big family holiday costing thousands of pounds in Portugal or Spain or Greece, because you might finish up losing quite a bit of money. The upside is it's going to be a great summer for the English and British seaside, many of those towns that have struggled for years, and that's the only good thing I think that comes out of it. But the extent to which government wants to take our liberties and doesn't want to hand them back, and we're told that Boris Johnson somehow is this libertarian figure. Well, he may have been when he was writing newspaper columns for the Telegraph, but he certainly isn't now.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed. Former Brexit Party and Reform UK Party leader, currently in quarantine, he said, in Kent. Thank you for joining us.